You ever watch something so ridiculous and absurd, something that tries its hardest to justify its most insane shit, that you just sit back and say, yeah, I loved it. I get that feeling whenever I watch something like Kuroko Basket, where a player literally uses Gios powers to mind control blockers into kneeling before him, only for the side characters to say, yeah, well, he actually shuffled his feet in such and such a way that shut the hell up and just say he has superpowers. That is the new skating anime SK8 The Infinity, which is now in its 6th episode at the time of this video. If you thought you were gonna get a normal sports skating anime, well, yeah, you're wrong. So initially, SK8 The Infinity seems like it's gonna be relatively normal. Our main character is Reki, a somewhat inexperienced skater that works at a local skate shop. One day, he comes across Langa, a foreign student who joins up at the skate shop for some extra money. Reki, looking for a skating buddy, starts to teach him how to skate. Pretty normal, right? Well, there's actually a super secret underground illegal deadly skating competition called the S that Reki is involved in. In this competition, the most eccentric and well-dressed skaters from all across the land gather in a no-holds-barred race to the bottom of an abandoned mine. You can only join in on the S if you first wager something of equal value. It's a tournament only for the most serious of skaters. Langa decides after seeing the skaters go down the S that he wants to join in as well and ends up doing exceptional due to previous skateboarding experience. So yeah, not a normal sports anime. Now there are other anime that take a sport and put it in a rather strange direction. Blue Lock and Megalobox immediately come to mind, but Skate grinds that line between an actual sports anime and something else. And often it's difficult to tell which one. So with that done, let's take a look at the background. The director Hiroko Itsume has mostly worked as an animator for series like Haruhi, Fullmetal Panic, and K-On! In 2013, she was given her first series, which was unsurprisingly none other than the swimming anime Free. When you consider some of its character designs, that begins to make a lot of sense. Her second anime, Banana Fish, also had a lot of... You're starting to see a pattern here. I really hope that Hiroko Itsume is given more series in the future because her unique flair is certainly welcome. Alright, so that brings us to the original writer of the anime. Let's take a look here. Ichiro Okuuchi? If you're not as much of an anime staff geek as I am, you might have not instantly recognized that name. Ichiro Okuuchi is the writer of such breakout hits such as Devilman Crybaby, Guilty Crown, and a little-known story you may not have heard of called Code Geass. Yeah, the writer of Code Geass is doing a pretty boy skating... Wait, that makes sense. Now, to be honest, there really isn't any writing within Skate that actually feels reminiscent of Code Geass, but I just found that an interesting factoid. Particularly because the director of Code Geass is currently working on Back Arrow, rather underwhelming currently airing anime. With that, let's talk about the anime itself. There is little doubt that Skate looks absolutely fantastic. As I said a few weeks ago, Wonder Egg Priority is definitely the best looking and best animated show this season, but Skate is certainly falling right behind it. Now, admittedly, Skate has it a bit easy, primarily because the actual skating occurs typically at the end of the episode, but when it does, it hits hard. One problem I have with a lot of sports anime is that they typically sit the viewer from the perspective of an onlooker rather than a participant. Now, Skate the Infinity's best scenes are when the viewer is dragged along down the slopes of the S. It gives a much more intimate look at the speed that the skaters are taking, and the risks that are likely experienced by going down this track. At the end of the S track, the participants have to skate through what seems to be an abandoned factory. This always serves to be a great capstone to the episode, as it's full of eye-pounding RGB goodness that makes for some fantastic shots. I think my favorite scene in this building has to be at the end of episode 1's race, when the opposing racer throws a handful of dynamite at Langa, while he effortlessly floats above the explosions and the music dims. This section always looks good and is usually my favorite part of each episode. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the opening. I would have to say that other than My War, Skate's opening Paradise is probably my favorite OP of the season. The scene where they all skate together in unison is stunning, and I think that's a good idea of how good this anime looks when everyone is actually on a skateboard. Now, that's all great on the eyes, no doubt, but that's not the main reason I love this anime. No, it's because of the obvious nonsense that this anime gets away with. Let me count the ways. Let's start with one of the dumbest moments in the whole anime, Langa's board. Langa is a former snowboarder, so one of the first things that happen when he starts skateboarding is that he constantly wipes because he's not affixed to the board. You would think that the correct thing to do would be, I don't know, learn to skateboard? Nope, we take the clear line of action, which is to literally duct tape the guy to the board, which, surprise, surprise, leads him to almost dying on multiple occasions. The next problem for Langa is that skateboards can typically only move in one direction with a slight amount of turn, unlike snowboards, which can more or less turn in 360 degrees. Again, the dumb thing for him to do here would be to actually teach him how to skateboard so he doesn't die. But again, we do the obviously logical thing and literally design the wheels of his boards off of an office chair. Now, I'm not about to go and try and fashion a board like this, but for some reason, I doubt it's actually going to work like this. Oh, but don't worry, it gets better. Now that Longa has more or less reinvented the sport of skateboarding in of itself, he's ready to do totally normal and possible things with his wonderful board of his. For example, changing the direction of his momentum at a moment's notice to literally flip over his opponent. Or this scene where he actually bounces off of a tree to regain momentum while going down the slope. And I'm not even going to describe what is happening here because he probably should have died. Longa employs all of these all of the time for some frankly hilarious results. Of all the totally crazy moves they pull in this anime, I would say the multitude of ways that the characters figure out how to grind is the craziest. If I could count the ways in which random corners and surfaces become makeshift bullet trains for these superhuman skaters, I could probably afford a much better skateboard than all of them. We have this little kid Mia who's capable of actually flipping his board on its side and grinding down the groove of the track itself. Or what about Adam, who presumably can skate while bent over at an angle that would make most MotoGP drivers blush? Actually, let's talk a little bit about Adam. So while it's not entirely clear who the actual antagonist of this series is, the leading candidate is Shindo, who goes by Adam in the skating world. This guy is the most ridiculous ham that I have seen written in anime in a long time. First of all, he's voiced by none other than Takahiro Koyasu, better known as the voice of Dio, so pretty much everything he says is a meme in the first place. By day, he's one of the top ministers in the Japanese diet. By night, he's a flamboyant matador skateboarder who has a Hisoka level of suspicious interest in Longa. His signature move in the S competition is the love hug, in which he somehow reverses his board, slams down on the front, and skates uphill for the purpose of causing the opposing skater to wipe out. Let's just put aside how obviously physically impossible this is. He uses this technique to literally dance with Longa for honestly I have no earthly clue why. Every single second that this guy is on screen is a trip, and frankly they could just make the entire anime about him. It's all these different aspects that give Skate its character. Obviously, it's not trying to take itself too seriously and knows how to indulge in its sillier elements, but still stays grounded enough to be an extremely enjoyable experience. Now, all of these things are obviously hilarious, but there are a few fundamental problems with Skate that we have to talk about. As I mentioned before, the basic premise of SK8 The Infinity is that we have all these competitors trying to become the best in the skating world by competing in S. And they do this by competing in S. And that's really it. Every single episode is exactly the same. Reki and Longa either learn some skating thing or they prepare for some skate on the S. Then usually by the end of the episode, they go to the S and skate, or maybe something a little different. That's really it. I wish I could say that I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but I'm really not. I really don't know why they can't have a skating competition at some other venue or have some other sort of contest, but the entire anime seems pretty laser focused on this whole S concept, which isn't bad in of itself, but after a while you have to ask yourself, is this it? Now, this gets to the biggest problem in SK8 The Infinity. I'm not even sure what it's actually about. Sure, we have Reki, who likes skating, I guess, and we have Longa, who is using skating as an outlet since he can no longer snowboard, but like, what is the actual obstacle they are looking to overcome? What actual conflict exists between all of these various characters? Now, wanting to do well in the Skate of the Week is plot enough, but I found my interest starting to fade as the stories and characters jump around without any clear endgame in mind. Sports anime typically benefit from having some upcoming objective to build excitement, but Skate doesn't really do that. Now, the whole dynamic between Reki and Longa kind of bothers me. One of my least favorite tropes in nearly all of media, not just anime, is the new guy who's better at everything trope. Reki is overall the character I want to see succeed as a skater because, well, he's the main character. Longa has arguably had more overall screen time than Reki himself, but he was introduced as a novice, and since the first episode has done nothing but dominate, so it's a bit harder for me to really want to root for him. Hey guys, so literally as I was finishing editing this video, episode 7 came out and actually was about this very thing. We'll see where this goes, but I really liked episode 7. So all in all, SK8 The Infinity is a fine experiment in a sport that really hasn't been given any attention in anime. It looks absolutely stunning, which is certainly a welcome change after the barely animated sports climbing girls and the lackluster gymnastics samurai from last season. If you're looking for an actual anime about skating, this really isn't it, and honestly, I think that's perfectly fine. SK8 The Infinity is ridiculously dumb. Very little of the actual skating performed in the anime is probably even possible, but honestly, I don't give a shit. It's a fantastic anime to have a laugh at with your friends or to just sit back and enjoy. But over time, my attention has definitely waned as a result of the weak writing and borderline non-existent plot. However, if the next arc of the story story has something new to offer, I'll be happy to get back into it. And if you want to get into my videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can see what comes next. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'll skate with y'all next time. Peace.